Welcome to Full PreFrontal, the show that exposes the mysteries of executive function. This podcast is a collection of conversations about the role of the prefrontal cortex, which impacts your focus, planning, problem-solving, emotional balance, and independence. So join us as we explore executive function and the science of learning. And now, here's your host, the founder of EXQ, Sucheta Kamath.
Welcome back to Full PreFrontal, where we discover the hidden powers of the brain's CEO that supervise and guides the rest of the brain to achieve goal-directed success. Stanislas Dehaene, one of the cognitive neuropsychologists, says that executive function is the most important 21st century skill. And the mature and well-developed frontal lobes help produce strong executive function, which are the guiding principles that help us manage our goals, take important decisions in a careful way, stop, reflect, and then maybe think again about your own approach to life. I'm your host, Sucheta Kamath, and my hope is through these meaningful and deep conversations, thought-provoking stories, we can gain clarity and lead more effective and productive lives. And there are a lot of people who help us in this journey. Some people have hacked their frontal lobes, and they have devised strategies to hack other people's frontal lobes. And there are some who have wisdom and clarity with which they share their important journey so that others can benefit. And that's why I am so honored today to have the most amazing and this inspiring, fabulous woman with me. Welcome to the podcast, Esther Wojcicki. She is a leading American educator, journalist, and a mother. Her approach in blended learning and integration of technology into education is what she has taught us how to rethink approaches to education. She's the founder of Media Arts program at Palo Alto High School, where she built a journalism program from a small group of 20 students in 1984 to one of the largest in the nation, includes or currently creates access to 600 students, 5 additional journalism teachers, and 9 award-winning journalism publications. And by the way, those are amazing. Everybody must check out these young budding journalists writing these amazing, inspiring stories. Esther serves as vice chair of Creative Commons and has previously worked as a professional journalist for multiple publications and blogs. She blogs regularly for the Huffington Post. Another little feather in her cap, of course, she is a very celebrated author, which we will talk about, her books, but she is one of the most a celebrity mom, you can say. And I'm really excited to talk to her about 3 children who are highly accomplished. And I'm very curious, without putting any pressure, how did they turn out to be so amazing? And lastly, I am really hoping that all of you will take Esther's words as golden words of wisdom, because she is going to probably compel you to pause and think about your own relationship with your approach to parenting, if you're a parent, your approach to educating children, and lastly, your approach to thinking about your own thinking. So welcome to the podcast, Esther.
Well, thank you so much for this incredible introduction. I'm very honored to be here with you, and I'm very excited to talk to everybody. So it's great.
Oh, we are honored. So let me start with this question. Because we are going to talk about self-reliant children or raising to become a self-reliant children, do you mind sharing with us what is your personal journey as a child? What made you self-reliant? Were you a self-reliant child? And one of the things that strikes to me is your clarity about how to stand up for yourself, how to advocate for yourself, how to question authority. Some of these are bold skills of boldness. So what was in your environment that made you so bold?
So the long story is in my book. And it's the first few chapters of the book. I talk about my childhood. But for your readers and for your listeners, I will make it a little bit shorter. abbreviated version, Cliff Notes.
Please do.
Um,
It's a great story, and everybody's going to really love that. Yes, it's a heartwarming
so
story.
I think the main thing that my childhood gave me was a lot of independence. And the reason that I got so much independence as a child was not because my parents were trying to make me independent, but was more because they were poor. They didn't have a lot of money.
Yes.
And I was part of the team, and I was expected to do a lot of things. I just remember, just as I'm talking to you right now, that I used to do the laundry for the family. I was about, I don't know, 8 years old or so. And in those days, we used to have washing machines that had wringers. And so you washed all the clothes, and then you had to put the clothes through the wringer. And I was tasked with doing this. And the main thing that you had to worry about was you don't want to put your finger in the wringer, because then, you would end up in the hospital because you and the clothing would both be stuck. So, I mean, it's kind of amazing that I was an 8-year-old child given this responsibility, and I was doing things, I mean, literally everything from clothing to sheets and,
Oh my God.
towels and, oh my God. But my parents, they showed me how to do it, and then they just expected me to do it. So I did it. And I never thought that anyone else couldn't do it, other than my brother. My brother ended up being somewhat of a pampered child, and so he never really did any of those things.
Was
As
he
a
younger to you?
He's younger. He was
Okay.
5 years younger, and so that's and I guess in that 5-year period they changed their philosophy. But what I ended up doing is being so empowered by all the things that I did around the house that I felt like I could pretty much tackle anything. And then, if you read in the book, I had an unfortunate, tragic
Yes.
experience in my childhood where my younger brother died. And I realized then that it was a mistake of the people that had long titles. I was just 10 years old at the time, and all the people that made all these mistakes were very distinguished. And I thought to myself, well, this is an opportunity for me to protect myself and to be able to understand things myself and not just rely on
Mm.
people just because they have a long title that seems very impressive. So that really propelled me to be as independent as possible. Um, and, a lot of kids might have thought that they were treated badly because they didn't have a lot of support. But I realized that I could do it. And so I did it. And I mean, that included paying for my own college education. My parents didn't pay for anything. And, I applied to college without a lot of support. My parents were both immigrants from Russia, so they knew nothing about the American education system. And I lucked out. I persisted. That
Mm.
was one thing that I think, and I try to help all parents remember, that you really want your child to persist. And even if they're persisting for something you don't like, I mean, you want to encourage the persistence, to be honest, because in today's world, it's called grit. And you want your kids to pursue things that they care about. And that is how I ended up more or less the way I am today, because I had this childhood that if I didn't persist, I don't know where I would be today. I probably, my parents wanted me to get married at 18. And I was like, what? You know, this is not exactly my idea. And they had already lined up a whole group of people that they thought were good candidates. And I was like, nope, not going to get married. And they thought this was a bad idea because, in those days, this was the beginning of the 60s. A woman's self-worth was based on her husband. Women didn't have a self-worth. Your self-worth was if someone married you.
Yes.
Really, and, there was this game that everybody used to play called Old Maid. That game is gone, but it was a card game, and you never
Yeah.
wanted to be the old maid. That was the person that no one wanted to marry, and
That's so
so
terrible.
that
Yes.
was so terrible. But anyway, so I just was like, I am going to be, I'm gonna direct my own life. I'm gonna do my own thing. And luckily, I managed to get into the only school I applied to, one school, UC Berkeley,
Oh my
and I
goodness.
managed to get in. And not only that, I got a scholarship. It was just shocking. Everything sort of fell into place. Um, but as a scholarship student at UC Berkeley, they provide the essentials, right? You get a
Yeah.
place to stay, you get a little bit of food, and that's it, and everything else you have to do on your own. So I had to work while I was going to school. It wasn't just a little bit of work, but all the time I was working. And I realized the importance of having a college education, and I was so bent on getting that degree that I took all these extra units at the same time, and I ended up being able to graduate in 3 years.
Oh my goodness.
Nobody graduates from Berkeley in 3 years. Actually, I look back on it, it's like, "My God, what was I thinking?" But, I just wanted to have that degree, and, yes, so that's what happened.
What strikes me, thank you so much for taking the time to go through that story, because it's so much better coming from you than me describing that. I think what your story is of persistence, resilience, and grit, and I think I'm glad that you mentioned the backdrop of poverty, and I don't mean backdrop of poverty, but forefront of poverty. And I think you write about that, the resilience. We know from trauma-based interventions, talking about students with grit tend to do better in spite of their traumatic experiences of poverty or other adversities, and you are kind of talking about that. So let me start um, by setting the stage for this idea of self-reliant child. Who is the most self-reliant child? And why is it so important to you that as an educator and as a parent, you share this with the world with a great sense of urgency? Um, I have read books like Wendy Mogul's, Blessings of Skin Knee, then also the Free Range Kids. And I cannot believe we have to now talk to parents about liberating their kids. So what's the urgency here that you're sensing?
Well, I think that the urgency that I sense is that we have gone the other way. It's it's not just in the United States, it's worldwide. And the reason is because we have more capability to quote, help our children. And we have technology to help them. We can keep track of them on their phone all the time. We know exactly where they are. You can check their homework because it comes to you, the parent, first before it comes even to the child. We have much more capability of being in control. And
Mm.
what does that do? That disempowers your child. And we have an epidemic of helicopter parents. And I also call them snowplow parents. They
Yes.
clear the way. And so when this child gets to college and they get to be an adult, what happens? Well, I'll tell you that those parents are still there. And I have a friend, Julie Litcott Haynes, who wrote a book, How to Raise an Adult. She was
Yes.
the dean of admissions at Stanford. And the theory of her book is, hey, parents, could you please not come to college with your kids? Because that's what was happening. All these people were moving to Palo Alto to be next to their kids. And
Can I,
even
can I tell you a quick
professors were
Can I
getting.
tell you quick story, which is ridiculous? Both my children went to Columbia, and when I dropped off my first one, and because I'm in this interest, my interest in the executive function, I work with a lot of college kids. I went to the Department of Student Support just to chat with them and see, do you see these executive function? They're like, let me tell you what I see. One example just bowled me over. So one mom had the audacity to show up on campus and said, Johnny is a brilliant child. He's gotten in. The only trouble you're going to have, Columbia, you're going to have, he just has a lot of trouble getting out of bed. So can you send somebody every morning so that he can get out of bed?
Are you kidding?
No,
Oh,
well,
no.
not just that, but the audacity for the mom to go to learning support to ask for that. Can
Oh
you
my.
imagine if this was my mom, she would first of all kick me, but this would never happen. To your point.
This is just symptomatic of the crazy things that parents are doing. And UC Berkeley has a course now called adulting. Have you heard
Oh,
about adulting?
yes, of course.
Okay, so you know what they teach? They teach kids like, oh yes, because they don't learn at home, how to do your laundry, how to use a credit card, how to boil an egg, all these things that you're supposed to learn growing up, you don't learn. And so these kids don't know how to do it. They don't know how to take care of themselves. And it's all a result of this philosophy that the more I do for my child, the better off he's going to be, the happier life he's going to lead. He'll do all these new things that I never had an opportunity to do. And my philosophy is just the opposite. Just, I want to tell all your listeners, the more you do for your child, the less empowered they are. Period. That's it. They won't be able to do anything for themselves, not make the bed, not cook dinner, nothing. They'll just be expecting you to come along to college and do it for them.
So I'm so glad you're now talking about your philosophy. So before you talk about your trick method, which is fantastic, by the way, um, can you address one issue that I often see, which is basically after reading your book, I concluded that everybody needs to develop emotional courage. Emotional courage for things to go wrong and be okay with them because they're temporarily wrong. So, what
Right.
is your advice to this lack of control, which is making people anal retentive or control freaks, or just this incredibly fear based approach to life? Um, what is your suggestion? Like, how can they undo that grips of fear?
The whole country is in a grip of fear right now. And
Yes,
everybody is so upset because their children are not getting the same curriculum to memorize that they used to get when they were in class and under the control of the teacher. So now kids don't have to be there. We have kids that are putting pictures up of themselves on their Zoom call so they don't, and you can see the kid, but you don't know that he's not alive. Yes, it's a 40%. 40% of the kids are not going on these Zoom calls. Well, it's just awful. It's hour after hour, lecture after lecture after lecture. I wouldn't go on the Zoom call either, It's ridiculous. So we need to give kids more control of their learning. That's where this new company I started, I don't know if you saw that. It's called Tract.app.
yes. Please tell
Tract.
everybody what that is. Yes,
So what that is, it's a kids ages 15 to 20 are creating what we call learning paths for younger kids so that they can do things, learn about things that are exciting and fun for them.
I
And
love that.
it is, so like one kid just did, I'm not kidding, a whole learning path on how to make a string out of grass.
Oh,
I mean, and he is one of these kids who knows how to live out in the wilderness, and he's going to do all of these different things on how to survive with nothing. And but these are amazing teenagers who are motivated to help younger kids who are stuck in these Zoom calls where they are emotionally dying. Let's put it that way.
this reminded me of a story of a behavioral ecologist who actually was not doing that, and he had to make a road trip to transport his car from his parents to his place, and he traveled all the way from I think New York to Arizona or something. I forget the journey, but he got so exhausted while he was driving, and so he pulled it by the side of the road, and he went into a little bit of the forest or whatever and lay there. And this was his first time. He was 22. First time he actually heard sounds in the forest. And he says, sounds in the forest? What? That changed his entire career path. He became this ecologist who now studies, he's the first one to analyze sounds that we don't even know exist. So I love this story that organically arriving to this area of life where you don't even know what you are made of or what you're all about until you have exposure. So I
That's
love this track path that you're talking about.
right. So what I'd like to do is, all these parents that are so worried, I want to make them feel better. They just need to read this book called Educated by Tara, I think her
I
last.
love it. Yes,
Okay, so
I read
Tara,
it. Yes.
yes, she couldn't even get an education until she was like 12 or 13 years old because she was part of a Mormon group that didn't believe in the American education system. So this poor kid was trying to learn to read by going in the bathroom and reading the Bible. And it was crazy. I just want you to know she didn't have any education for years and she turned out fine. Your kid is only missing education for what? 1 year at the most? So we can all calm down. I'm sure they'll be fine because basically all education in most of the schools today, it's called memorization, not learning. And so just imagine, so they didn't memorize all those dates from 1865 to 1900. So what? Not going to make a big difference. They can easily figure it out later on, and they can also go back in school later on. So the only thing they're missing in school, I just want you to know, there's just one major thing they're missing. Their friends. That's
Oh,
it. All the kids miss the social interaction, but they don't miss anything else. Maybe they miss lunch.
I mean, still not part of the academics, is what you're saying.
Right? Lunch
Oh,
after school and their friends.
so let's start with your 5-part methodology of how to raise successful, independent children. And one thing that I really was blown away by um, the first part which you talk about trust, and it's such a two-way traffic, and I want you to explain this, but trusting your children requires, I wonder if you have thought about this, that does that require the parents to have received that kind of trust from their own parents, or in their own life somebody trusted them to do things? You know what I mean? I feel like, where is this fear, not willingness to trust, because these little people have no capacity to make any decisions, is how sometimes parents may look at children. So walk us through those 5 steps.
So the 5 steps, it's trick. And the first one is trust, as you mentioned. Second, respect. Then independence, collaboration, and kindness. And that's how my book is organized. And so I'll walk you through the first one, trust. So a lot of parents did not experience any trust when they were growing up. So it's very hard for them to parent a different way because you tend to parent the way you were parented. It's very hard. So I suggest that you put it on a conscious level. You say to yourself, that's why I developed the acronym so you can remember all the time. Am I trusting my child or am I not trusting my child? So just like I'm telling you, in my child developed a sense of competence in myself because they trusted me to do so many things. So I think it's important for everybody to realize that no matter what your childhood was like, you can change and make sure that your child experiences trust. Can you imagine what happens when a child feels good about themselves, when they feel trusted? You see these kids and you say to yourself, oh my God, whose kid is that? How did that happen? You want a child that's going to be able to say, hello to you when you walk in, smile. There are the other kids who do just the opposite. Someone comes in the house and they run and hide somewhere. Um, the child that is greeting you and the child that is saying, can I get you something to drink? That's a child who feels good about themselves, who feels competent, that feels that they can help other people. And they only get there because you trusted them. You gave them that opportunity.
I love that. And how would you envision that? And you write a lot about this. So if you don't mind sharing, how do you envision this working out in the classroom? How can a teacher express their trust in their students?
Um, I was really an unusual teacher, and let me just tell you, a lot of my philosophy spread to the Palo Alto schools, which is good. So I just give you an example of what I did that trust. So first, for every child, that one of the main things kids do is be tardy, right? And so what can the teacher do? So I said to the kids at the beginning of the class, of the beginning of the year in September, you know, I'm going to trust that if you are tardy, it was a good reason. You had to go to the bathroom, you had some other issue, the teacher from the other period kept you too long, something. So I'm not going to embarrass you and humiliate you when you come in late, which is what happens in all the classes, by the way. Did you know that? Kid comes in late and they get humiliated and embarrassed by the teacher. So that's the method they use to control tardies. So I said just the opposite. You come late, you don't have to explain it. I trust you. Guess what? No one was late.
Wow.
It was, or if they were late, there was one penalty. If you were late consistently, it sounds crazy, but it worked. If you were always late and then I talked to you about it and you were still late, then you had to buy cookies for the whole class every time you were late.
Oh
And
my
the
goodness.
class just loved it. Oh my God, he's 2 minutes.
So everybody's
I'm
watching
telling you,
him.
nobody was late. It was so effective.
I love that. I love that.
It is really, yeah, it was crazy. But so it starts with that. Then I also did other things, like, for example, the teacher's responsible for taking roll in class every day. So, this is a big responsibility. So I would pass that around. Kids got the whole week where they got to take roll in class and act like they were in charge.
I
And they
love
got to
that.
do everything. Then the other way that I built into these slowly, so these are, small steps. I was teaching writing, so I taught English, I taught journalism, and so I put the kids in charge of editing each other's work. That was after they had had some training, of course, from me. But that was, I'm trusting them to be able to give proper feedback to each other. It's
Love
a
that.
big deal. And I'm telling you, if you look at the publications, any of the publications coming out of Palo Alto High School journalism, you'll wonder who wrote those. As a matter of fact, how could they be like so intelligently written? It's all
Wow.
the kids because it belongs to them. They own it. They feel a sense of responsibility and caring. And the publications are outstanding. We win on a regular basis something called Gold Crowns from Columbia. And gold, with I guess the lowest one we've ever won is a Silver Crown.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
but I really am so impressed and proud of them. So, how did we cope in this pandemic? Let me just tell you. You know how everybody hates the Zoom calls? This is the easiest way to make them all love the Zoom calls. Put the kids in charge of the Zoom call.
Oh my goodness. Tell us more. How
Yeah.
would that look like?
So, what that looks like, so I have 5 editors for the newspaper. There's about 60 kids in the class. The 5 editors are in charge of the Zoom call. They all take turns.
I love that.
And let me tell you, everyone shows up because they want to see their friends. And by the way, no one is muted because the number one thing teachers do is they go on the call and then they mute everybody right away. So you're muted, can't say anything. And then that's where the kids put up pictures of themselves, right? Instead of them. And
So
so
what's striking about that, if I may interject here, is you are okay with mess. You're okay with little ruckus. You're okay if this is not highly structured and going like a, marching band. That's like a well-oiled machine. You're saying, yeah, we are work in progress. We're tightening some parts. We are letting loose some parts. That's beautiful.
It produces outstanding products and outstanding kids. So if you take a look at the number of students of mine that have become amazing, you'll be shocked, because there are lots of, that's how I got that title, Godmother of Silicon Valley, because so many of my students end up leading companies. I mean, they get a lot of practice in my class leading. That's right, it's chaos. You come in and you don't see kids sitting in rows quietly. You see kids talking to each other, working in groups, running around, even eating, whatever. It's like, but then look at the product and look at how happy they are.
I was really touched, maybe that there are many stories that you tell. One of the funny stories I thought was the story of the school board member with mustache and horns that one accidentally got published. Do you mind sharing that? Because that's such a great story of you. First of all, again, you're also good at demonstrating your sense of calm, and you're a chilled person and nothing phases you, but you're also saying to them, I trust you so much that you're not a bad person or this is not wrong. And because only then that can facilitate some problem solving.
That's right. Absolutely. So this is what happened. The
The best story.
students are putting together the newspaper. And in those days, it was a layout. And so you had to lay it out in hard copy and on a light table. And there was somebody running for the school board, and the kids did not like him. And so what they did is they took his picture and put horns on it. And I said, you better make sure to get rid of that before we publish, because the last thing we want to do is publish that. So I didn't supervise, just said, let's do it. Lo and behold, what happens? The paper comes back and the horns are still there. Can you? It's like 3,000 copies and the pay horns on. So I went out to Target, or I've forgotten, one of those places, and I bought like 50 black felt pens. And okay, you guys, you're going to black out the whole thing, because we've got to distribute these papers and he cannot have horns. So you're going to have to get rid of them. That is what we did. All the kids did it.
Well,
and we just said, we're sorry, but there was the picture was not complimentary. And so we didn't want to say you had horns.
you know what I love about that story is, one, and you as a teacher didn't say any judgment about like what's wrong with you or how dare, or there was no like authoritarian like wrath that I'm sure you might have been irritated, but not. Secondly, I think you yourself shifting gear into problem solving probably was such a modeling to the kids that, okay, we have a oopsies or we have a glitch, let's do something about it.
Yeah, let's fix it. Because I mean, the other thing a lot of people would have just thrown the issue away. It's like, no, we can't do that. People worked really hard on that. So anyway,
That was another very important part I felt, which is your constant, like really safeguarding the effort as well as cost, money, being very sensitive to the value of things. I love that approach too. So talk us through the respect. What does that look like at home and in classrooms?
So, well, I'll just finish in classrooms, since that's where I was just leaving off. So respect, teenagers, they come up with very unusual ideas. Let's put it that politely. And some of those ideas, it's like, oh my God, are we really going to do that? So I always felt it was important to respect their ideas. And one of the ways the publications come up with stories is they come up with story ideas. And some of the story ideas, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do with this story idea. But, I never really said anything. I respected their ideas, and that gave them the opportunity to be even more creative and come up with more ideas. And what I discovered through all those years of doing this is that they will filter out the crazy ideas themselves if you give them the opportunity, if you don't tell them what to do. And I've let a lot of really unusual ideas go. That's how I ended up with so many publications, because one of the publications was started in 2012, and it was in response. The kids wanted to write more feature stories, and I said, well, we don't have enough room in the feature page. We just don't have enough. It's not big enough. And so, like, well, why don't we start a magazine? And I was like, really? We already have another one. We have a lot of magazines. They're like, well, we need another magazine, and the main purpose of this magazine is going to be to teach people how to braid their hair. Like, what? This is really a little too much. And there was a whole group of them that's like, it's hair braiding recipes and fashion. I was like, I don't think we've ever seen a magazine like that. But so anyway, I let them do it. Can you imagine? They did it. And this turned out to be one of the most popular magazines. And today it's won a gold crown from Columbia. So, you just have to give them a chance to try out some of their ideas. It's an innovative publication. So that's respect in the classroom. And the same thing is, well, respect at home. I thought it's a little easier when you have only 3 kids as opposed to 60. But like, for example, one of the big things that we used to face is, you want to take a trip on the weekend, and you've got 3 kids. We didn't have TVs in the back. We didn't have phones. We didn't have anything. You just have 3 cranky kids in the back of the car. We're like, what do you want? So one of the things I did, let them plan the trip. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? What are we going to do when we get there? Where are we going to eat? Everything. You plan it. Boy, there was no complaining, no crankiness, no, are we there yet, Mom? Kind of crap. It worked out really well. So I respected all their ideas. And I respected their ideas decorating in the house. I think I gave that story in the book.
Yeah,
How
could you share that?
6-year-old Susan picked the carpet for her bedroom. Oh my God. And she picked hot pink shag carpet, which we then had to live with for a long time because it was wall to wall installed. Oh my God.
What I was about to say about that is, I think, feelings and decisions ahead of fashion, and I think that no compromise about the values. I think that, to me, that speaks so highly of what the value is of the family that we respect. But once you take the decision, the chance of you standing behind your own decision is going to be greater. And that's going to give you some empowerment to manage your own emotions about it. If you don't like the carpet after 2 months, too bad, you chose it.
You picked it. And it's not only that, it's locked down on the floor here. There's no way we're getting rid of it. But it's interesting for me to see my daughters doing the same thing with their children. So, I came over to one of my daughter's houses, and I noticed on the wall somebody had written in crayon on a brand new wall, painted white, right? I love you, Mommy. Oh, so sweet, with a heart. So, listen, she didn't have the heart to say to him, you don't write on the wall, So that's still there. It's still on the wall.
Yeah. And actually, I was going to ask you this question. It's a little sidebar from what we were talking about, but how does it feel to raise, or maybe how does it feel that you have raised 3 beautiful girls, and now they are the most highly successful young entrepreneurs and leaders in the country? So tell us a little bit about your journey as a parent of these who have become super superhumans. And probably people, and I'm so glad you kind of bottled your secret and actually put it in a book so people have access to it. But do you look back? You probably were not expecting this, but how do you process all that? You have these incredibly successful children. Tell us about your children.
So my children are really successful. I'm very proud of them. So my oldest daughter, yeah, Susan, is the CEO of YouTube. And I know. And my second daughter, Janet, is a professor of pediatrics at University of California, San Francisco.
Oh my
And she's
goodness.
focused on the obesity epidemic and try to help parents in advance before their child has a problem. And then my third daughter, Anne, is the CEO and co-founder of 23andMe. It's a personal genetics
Oh
company.
my God.
And so they got to pursue what they personally thought was important to them. And it was all through their childhood and, through their lives and even now, with everything. And what I find interesting is that they let their children do the same thing.
Unbelievable. And I'm really interested in this question because you are a child of immigrants. I am an immigrant and my children are first generation immigrants. So your daughters are second generation children of immigrants, I guess.
Right.
And I think this ties in really beautifully with your third point, which is independence. What how so first of all, I don't think you were trying to do anything. You're just being this way, and you lived that in that space as a teacher and a parent, which is so beautiful. And you just now retrospectively wrote about it. So
Right.
it's not that you're trying to follow a recipe. You were just creating this wonderful value-based system that you lived. How do how did your children become so independent? Can you give some examples that you talk about in the book? Particularly what interests me is the way they came to your own car buying situation that you describe in the book about, how your dad got the car and then you now were able to fix the car whenever needed, and your neighborhood, when eventually people couldn't believe that you know anything about cars. But even your daughters started as young people. Before they graduated from high school, they held jobs. They tried to innovate in that space. Where, how is that independence? How does that look like as a parent? If somebody's listening to this podcast who is a teacher in a middle school or a psychologist or a parent from middle schooler, where do they shape that the children are not only asked to do these things, but given an opportunity to explore what will I be doing as a job, before I go.
So, it's a great question. I think one of the problems that people face today is that they've been helping their kids too much all along. So it's hard for young kids, 10, 11, 12 years old. They are more reluctant to try new things because the first question they have is, am I doing it right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things I faced in the classroom as a journalism teacher, I said to the kids, I want you to come up with your own feature story idea. And at the end of the semester, they said that the hardest part of my class, I did an evaluation, was coming up with your own idea. They
Wow.
just, and I think, and then they said it's because they never have to do that in other classes. They're always given a choice. Here's 3 topics, pick one. Or here's 3 books you can read, pick one. And so I opened up the whole world and I was like, no, you have to pick what you want to do. And then the main thing they were worried about was, is this an A topic? I was like, don't worry about it, so I got rid of the whole grade pressure. No grades. All you have to do is revise in this class and you'll get an A, no problem.
Love
And
that.
and so, but I think with parents also, I think it's important for kids to feel that if they make a mistake, which all learning happens as a result of mistakes, by the way,
I love
that
that.
you will
Yes.
treat them with kindness because there's a lot of mistakes that kids make. And don't get too mad, because they're worried about you getting mad and then worried about you holding a grudge. And a lot of parents hold grudges. It's so bad.
Oh
So
no.
I never ever did that. I mean, my kids did a lot of things that, you could get mad about, but I tried
Like
I
what?
tried not to get too well. There were a lot of, yeah, it depends on which age you
Just
target, but
give us a few examples.
well, one of them, teenage years, we left them alone. I think this story is in the book. Um, we left my three daughters alone while we went away for the weekend. We were just gone one night. And somehow or other, of course, I told them in advance. It's like, yeah, we take care of the house. Oh, of course, we'll do everything, Mom. And I came back and the house was like spick and span beautiful. I was like, have you spent all weekend cleaning the house or what's been going on? I just don't know. Oh, Mom, we're so happy that you like it. Just so forth. It was like, oh, wow. But, I had a sense something was not quite right. Then Monday morning, I went to school and I noticed across the class, first period class, a girl wearing an outfit. And I was like, wow, that looks just like my outfit. I have the same thing. Where'd you buy it? She's like, got it in your closet.
Oh my goodness.
It's like,
I
what?
love that story.
It's like, I couldn't believe this. Actually, I just could not believe it. And she's like, oh, yeah, there was a big party at your house on Saturday night. Oh my God. Anyway, so I got home. You can imagine I was at this point a little bit, have you ever seen the parent with smoke coming out of their ears? Well,
Yes.
I was like, hey, you guys, do you want to tell me what was going on in our house on Saturday night? Anyway, that unfolded. They had a massive party.
God.
And yeah, well, fortunately, nothing really happened except I did lose that outfit, and which she did give back later. But the other thing is, of course, the police then knew where our house was because they were called.
Oh God.
It was too much noise. And so, but after that, I didn't leave them alone again. I figured that was just too tempting. They were teenagers. And so if we wanted to go away for the weekend, I was like, okay, we're going to have this adult in the house, and I tried to pick some grandmother like person, that would like instill some kind of fear of some kind. But anyway, that was it. But, nothing terrible really happened other than I was a little ticked.
Yeah, I think what's so again interesting about your stories, first of all, such good memory. So, but I think that again, to me, what strikes is there's some sense of ease about you that you're like, yeah, okay. There's no like wrath, like there's no like incredible judgment on the kids have failed. You have failed us, so which is so
Right.
important
Yeah,
because
I didn't my theory has been that if you get really angry about anything or really stressed, you can't think.
yes.
And so that's what I've always tried to tell my daughters and, to always demonstrate, even for my students, is that, if there's a problem, you want all your faculties to be able to function to solve it. And so if you get diverted because you're so angry, then you can't think clearly. And that's been my philosophy all along. And I mean, even in this pandemic, I'm stuck in this house like everyone else, but I'm trying to do as much as I can from the house, try to make it an exciting life for myself in the house. So I've been baking, and my husband is just really, he's going to get fat on all my cooking. My dog is very happy, So all those kinds of things, it's not going to last forever, even though it feels like forever. But I think, and then all the parents out there that are so upset, that's why I try to help the parents. Get your child to help you be part of the team instead of you serving them. Because as you serve them and as you do all these things for them, you are disempowering them. And you might think you're helping them, but you're doing just the opposite. You want them to be self-reliant.
This, I think, the what really the approach I have taken is when I work with parents, I tell them that pandemic is a curriculum. So please take that curriculum. It's like AP emotions. So
Yes,
take it seriously, which means the regular curriculum is on the back burner. So you need to really understand that it is here to teach you so many valuable lessons about how to. And if you don't take that curriculum seriously and go after some silly activity in math and some assignment in science and some paper in English, you'll be losing your mind about how to align yourself.
right. Absolutely. This is an opportunity to learn other skills. And, you know, I that's why I said to a lot of the teachers and a lot of the teaching um, programs I've been involved with is give kids more of an opportunity to do things in pairs, online, together projects, instead of lecturing to them all the time. This is an opportunity to do different things. And that's where Tract comes in because this gives kids an opportunity to try out new things that they might not have ever encountered, and they might want to. And it's empowering. It's all about the world, all about learning, all about empowering kids to make them feel more happier, more capable, and better problem solvers.
So, about the last two, which is collaboration and kindness, and I love that you included kindness because uh, I I think sometimes hyper focusing on achievement almost gives this impression that it you have no time to be kind because it's a cutthroat competition. There's world out there, there are wolves out there, and somehow to survive the attack of the wolves, you have to be brutal. So, talk us through these 2 points.
So collaboration, it's if you just think about it, if you collaborate with somebody, they have input into what your decision is, then they're going to follow it. And I just did that in the classroom all the time. All the rules were collaborative. Kids built the rules, so they followed the rules. It's very
Love that.
different than a situation where you are a dictator and you tell people what to do, then you have to be a policeman in the classroom. And that I just didn't work with my philosophy. And the same at home, you collaborate with kids on, we have certain goals in our family. What are the goals? And how are we going to reach those goals? And what can you do to help reach those goals? And if you think about that, kids are very capable and we don't take advantage of that. And we see them as incapable because of course they were when they were born, but they grow. You have to remember that. And so it's important to collaborate with them on decision making, on, I mean, even like what to make for dinner this week. Let them come up with the recipes. Let them go online and find out what you want to eat. Let them help cook. Let them do a lot of things that you personally think are in your realm as a parent. They can do a lot. I mean, I was just at my house, one of my daughter's houses, Susan, the other day, and there was a huge mess on the floor. And all of a sudden, I saw the 5-year-old come out with the vacuum. I'm not kidding. She's 5.
Oh my
And
God.
I said to Susan, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah, this is her pandemic job. She's in charge of vacuuming."
That's so amazing.
And she bought this vacuum, it doesn't have a cord. It's cordless. So the kid can carry it, just goes all around the house vacuuming up everything. It's like, don't vacuum up my jewelry, you have to be careful.
This is like a human Roomba.
Yes,
Walking
it's a
around.
human room, and let me tell you, she's very proud of her skills.
So cute. But that's exactly what you want.
That's
And
right.
and I
That's
love
it.
that what you said is I think we as a family have goals and how can you be part of those goals and can you help us achieve those goals? It's such a good way, rather than parents have goals for their children. So right there is no collaboration. And
There's no
secondly, I think I see often that parents are only discussing when the kids never didn't get on board. Like I see, I'm a clinician, so I see people coming into the office and it is not the child's idea. How
sure.
are you? So I said, you're not dropping a car off that you will pick up after a few hours. It's
They
not
think
that.
about it that way. They do.
They
Fix my
literally do.
car. Yes. Needs a tune up. Tune her up.
Tune her up.
Yes,
But no,
that's right. And as
we
soon
like,
as she's done, then I'll pick her up.
so I have actually, when right after we begin, I have the students or the client create a contract. What are you willing to do? And what am I willing to do? And is this agreeable to you?
Uh-huh.
And what are the parents going to do? Because if this is not a collaboration between three of us, then maybe this is not a good idea. I am not going to do anything to you. We are going to work together to look at some solutions that you're struggling with. I'm happy to be a guide. So as we come to the end, and you kind of frame everything from a perspective of a grit, and you say um, that grittiness is needed even when it's time to back down gracefully. It's the skill that gives us the strength to make a change. And I love that because uh, grit grit is the power source, but grit can also be part of the break, because sometimes it's wrong to pursue something that is not going to go anywhere. There is no need to show off how determined you are to persist. Can you
That's
talk
right.
about that before we end?
Yeah, it's so important. So you have to be, it's okay to make a mistake and then to say, okay, this didn't work out and I'm going to try a new path. And the first person you have to forgive is yourself. And it's so important to treat yourself and all those around you, in a way that shows respect and kindness. And so, yes, I think there's a lot of people out there that get so angry and they don't really understand their own anger, but they are really angry at themselves, but they don't even know it.
Well, this has been the most amazing, inspiring, and reassuring conversation for me. I'm going to ask you to recommend some couple of books for our listeners. But another quote that I really love, where you said, "When your child is courageous, be sure to acknowledge it." That is such a beautiful way to relate to your child, because that is a skill. To be courageous is a skill.
It is really a skill. Yeah. Um, so I'm very excited that you are that that is something that you think is important.
Yes. So as we end, Esther, what are your two favorite books that have influenced you or you feel will make a big change in people's perspective if they read it?
Well, I think those are different, but I can just tell you that one of my favorite books is one that you mentioned briefly, and it's about the skinned knee.
Oh, you do love that?
I think she did a great job in
Oh,
that
I
book.
love that. Yes.
I love that book. And
Wendy Moguls. Okay.
Wendy Mogul, yes. So I think we can recommend her book. And just thinking out loud, it just depends. Is it parenting book, I think, that we want?
Anything you felt that kind of uh, shifted your perspective about life? I had Maggie Jackson. She is a journalist, and she recommended, which I had not read, was about Rosetta Stone. It's a very old book about Egyptian history and beginning of Rosetta Stone, or impact of Rosetta Stone. And I just picked it up and read it. So it's something, she said she keeps going back to that book even after so many years, and she's read it like 10 times.
Well, I would say that one of the things that has really impacted my life, but I read it many years ago, um, and it's it's a philosophical book. It is The Prince
Yes,
by
beautiful book.
Machiavelli. And because, it was written like 500 years ago, but the principles that he stated in that book are still relevant today.
Well, thank you that's a fantastic book recommendation, by the way. And I just a quick sidebar. Another neuroscientist wrote a book called Evil, and it talks about so there's a book called Science of Evil, which I read. I'm very interested in these lack of empathy, lack of imagination for a human condition, and what kind of psychological and what does neuroscience tell us about that? And so there's a Science of Evil, and then this new book came, which was about just evil, and she presents a different perspective on understanding psychology of those who end up being evil. And one of the references she makes in this book is this Machiavellian approach, self-serving, self-directed, benefiting the self at a cost of harming others. That kind of thinking requires so much check. Like, you need to keep those things in check.
Right.
Because if you don't, then it's going to be great trouble for humanity, not just yourself.
That's right. Well, that book really is something that everybody should know about and should take an opportunity to read it. And if you don't want to read it, the whole book, you can read, an abbreviated version. The main points are the most important thing.
Well, Esther, thank you so much for being here with us today on Full Prefrontal. You are so charming, and it's delightful, and your stories keep me coming back to them. I actually made notes of all your stories so that I can recall and tell my friends and my children even. And thank you for all the projects you're working on. I really look forward to keeping in touch, and it's utter joy what you have done for our children and what you continue to do for our teachers. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you again for this great interview. I really enjoyed it, and I wish you all the best in 2021.
Thank you. That's all the time we have. Please keep in touch. If you love what you heard, share it with as many friends as you can. And stay close to your family. Follow all these amazing pieces of advice that Esther shared. And until next, be well.
Thank you for listening to Full Prefrontal, exposing the mysteries of executive function. To contact your host, Sucheta Kamath, and learn more about her work on improving executive function, visit her website at exqinfiniteknowhow.com. That's www.exqinfiniteknowhow.com. Tune in next week for another informative episode of Full Prefrontal, hosted by the founder of EXQ, Sucheta Kamath.